Okay, so thanks again for having me today, and I apologize to everyone for having to listen to me multiple times in the day. Just quick background. The Ontario Waste Management Association, not-for-profit trade association, very similar to CPIA with an Ontario focus. We do differ in some ways in the fact that we've got both private membership and public membership within the organization. And our members manage pretty much the gamut of what's happening in the waste management sector. So our members would do everything from collection, haulage, transfer, processing, disposal, energy from waste, and they're managing sort of all aspects or all types of materials within the waste stream. So I'm going to try to be concise because I'm told I'm not always that concise, so I'll try to do my best at keeping us on time. And I'm going to kind of walk through what we see as the problem from our organization and then what we're trying to do to address that problem. So what's the problem? Hopefully this isn't too offensive of a graphic. There's lots of very, very good work that's happening out there by a lot of different organizations. But I think as we look at the problem specifically out there, and we tend to look at it in three areas: funding, networks, and data. When it comes to funding, there really isn't right now a coordinated use of funds to look at the issues that are out there. There's not necessarily an understanding of what types of funds are available potentially for academic endeavors. The network right now is still relatively weak. So it's not necessary that the sector knows what type of academic research is out there, what expertise is out there to solve some of the current issues that are out there. And the academic sector doesn't necessarily have a great outlet to understand some of the issues that the sector is facing. From a data perspective, there is some good data out there, specifically on the residential side, but it is difficult to wade yourself through. And there's a whole bunch of other gaps currently that are in place for data. So there's a real need to try to address those core issues. So a slide has gone missing, but let me start with sustainable funding. Our organization has in the past done a fair amount of research. We've done major projects lately on cap and trade and looking at how what the emissions are coming from the waste management sector, and you'll hear a little bit more about some of that research later today. We've also done research around organics. We've been doing some greater development around data, specifically around landfill and organic processing facilities. But when it comes to our organization, it's very, very difficult for us to try to manage the allocation for research, the budget for research within our own budget, because it could vary from any given year, and it's difficult necessarily to react quickly. So we have lots of people that will come to us for funding, lots of project ideas, and I think we certainly understand that we're probably not the best mechanism to try to coordinate and allow for funding for the gamut of different types of research projects that are out there. So we looked in quite a number of areas at sort of different types of models around how funding is being provided elsewhere. We have landed with a model in the United States, an organization called the Environmental Research and Education Foundation. It's a not-for-profit, non-lobbying charitable organization. It has a mission to facilitate research, education initiatives related to sustainable solid waste management practices to benefit the sector and also the communities they serve. The foundation's mission is executed via 4 key programs. So they have research grants, internal research that they do, scholarships, and education. EREF currently right now is one of the largest sources of research funding related to solid waste in North America. They've got a budget of over $1 million US, which funded annually in grants and scholarships. And so they provide an interesting model that we are looking now to facilitate across the country. So what EREF has, which is nice out of the box type of work, is they have the ability to raise funds, separate those funds from advocacy. They've got a process to tender out specific research projects, but also broad research projects. And then they've got a vetting process to make sure that those academic projects meet rigorous criteria. So we've looked at them, and we've actually signed a memorandum of understanding with them. That memorandum of understanding would then set up a Canadian research working group that would help to set the research agenda for Canada, so that again, there is differences in the types of issues the waste management sector is facing in Canada versus in the United States, but it would allow for collaboration to happen between the two. And we are looking at ways to then help them to facilitate fundraising efforts and assisting better awareness and networking to happen. So essentially, we're just becoming a conduit for them to establish a very similar type of setup that they've got in the US in Canada. So again, in the slide that's up there, there's a list of some of the strategic objectives that we've got. The memorandum of understanding was just signed last month, so we are just in the process of establishing the work plan to get the Canadian Working Group up and running, that individuals are selected to that group, and then we start to promote the activities within the country. Another core issue is around building that network, and I think we've looked internally at what we can do to help better establish that network. So we have already gone out and started to profile research and academics through our communication. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out to provide members with an update on what's happening in the media, but it also allows us to talk about research that may be happening in the sector that they should be aware of. We've also started to try to profile in our bi-weekly newsletter, which is a little bit more in depth, some of the individuals doing research in the sector as well. We're looking at, we run a major conference in November, the Canadian Waste to Resource Conference, and we are looking at ways to better integrate academic research into that sector. So this year, for the first year, we'll be providing the opportunity for poster board displays at that conference, again, to better create ties between the academic sector and the waste management sector. We're also looking at other events that we run to better facilitate networking opportunities as well. And we've also looked at, we have a database system, which I'll talk a little bit more about, but that database system provides us with the opportunity to potentially host research on that database system, which would provide broad access to anybody in the public or anybody in the academic sector or any organization out there to have access to that research, so people understand what's out there. The third problem that we've looked at is really the data problem. So there's a lot of different work that's been done out there by lots of other jurisdictions around better capturing waste management data. We, in the past as an organization, have done work in more of a piecemeal basis. So we've run surveys and tried to capture data ourselves. But again, as soon as you've done the data, it's outdated, and then there's a 4 or 5 year time lag between when you do the data again. So a year ago we launched, or 2 years ago I guess now, we launched a survey database system that allows us to collect annual data from facilities across the country or across the province. We focused on landfills and organic processing facilities to begin with, largely because we thought they were probably the easiest to develop surveys for. And largely the types of information we're asking for basic data around where the facilities are located, what types of approvals they have, so what capacity do they have to actually process materials at those facilities, what are their annual measurements, what are the types of environmental controls that they have in place at those facilities. The surveys are very much in line with what the government already asked most of these facilities to respond to on an annual basis, but the government currently has no ability right now to capture that data and collate it. So that's what we're trying to do through that project. Again, the platform we're using is called Re-TRAC Connect. It's used in a number of other jurisdictions. It's got a pretty strong record of allowing for data to be captured. We did publish our first 2 reports in March. So those reports for landfill and organic processing facilities are up on our site. And again, we're looking at ways to make sure that that data, we can make that data available to the academic sector to do research. Obviously, there's some confidential issues around some of the data, but again, we're trying to look at ways to better ensure that the data can flow to academics so that analysis can be done on it. The final thing I'll mention on this side is again, it's great to capture lots of pieces of data, but if you don't have metrics in place and you don't have clear definitions in place, it's problematic. So one of the other efforts we moved forward with a couple of years ago was trying to create a guideline for the accountable management of end-of-life materials. This means, how do you ensure that you're getting clear data from waste management facilities as to how the material is being processed at those facilities? So this guideline provides a way to, again, make clear what the metrics are for measuring outcomes, what the definitions are, and ensuring that there's also some rigor in there, so a verification process as to how that data is being published. And that's everything from my side.